Welcome to the show. We are up and running on a Tuesday. Almost forgot what day it was. Glad to have you with us. Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat along with IrishBreakdown.com. I'm Sean Stiers. Jesse Stiers will hopefully be joining in shortly. He is actually set up in my man cave where I used to do the show when we were exclusive to the Irish Breakdown YouTube channel, and he is getting set up as we speak. Are you able to receive me at this time, Jesse Stiers? Oh, hold on a second. I'm not hearing you now.
I hope everyone can hear me because I can hear you.
A second ago, he could hear me, or I could hear him, but he couldn't hear me, and now it's the other way around. So we're working through that. We've got 19 days to go until the start of the Notre Dame football season when the Fighting Irish kick off at Miami. And, of course, Sports Radio WSBT is the place to hear said Notre Dame football game. Are we on any better path at this point, Jesse?
I hope we are.
Try now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Hey. A sigh of relief. Can you hear me? That's the question.
Oh, yeah. It's been a long day, but we're here. Everyone can hear each other, and I'm ready to go now.
Yes. The finer points of doing a radio show is the ability to communicate with each other. Yes, Fred, we can hear you. I'm glad that we can hear you in the YouTube chat today. And don't forget, of course, you can watch this show live on either YouTube channel, either the Irish Breakdown YouTube channel or the Sports Radio WSBT YouTube channel. You still good on that end?
Still good.
Let's talk a little Notre Dame wide receivers then, because we're going to hear some comments from receivers coach Mike Brown, and I saw Salty Virginia Peanuts, our old friend, got in early, and the banner picture for the show on the YouTube he says he likes the picture for tonight's show, but is Brown giving Jaden Greathouse instruction, or is it the other way around? I don't even know if you've seen the photo, Jesse. I'll go with Mike Brown giving Jaden Greathouse the instruction for today, but I mean, Salty would obviously make the case the other way. Where does your expectation level, though, Jess, sit with this group of Notre Dame wide receivers compared to maybe, I don't know, the last 5 years or so, 3-4 years? Maybe we can even just go Marcus Freeman era. Where does the expectation level sit with this group?
I think the expectation level is higher than ever, especially in comparison to any of the wide receiver class or rooms that Marcus Freeman has had at the beginning of the season. And the reason I say that is because you have Malachi Fields, who's an experienced guy, has a lot of repetition elsewhere, and is on a lot of draft big boards. You have your in-house guy in Jaden Greathouse, who, you probably believe is you're going to be your homegrown 1,000-yard receiver. And then you have Will Pauling, of course, that came in from Wisconsin, who also provides a ton of production. Just really hasn't had someone who could throw him the ball over at Wisconsin. Then you add in people like Jordan Faison, Cam Williams, Elijah Burris. There's a lot in this room. I think the talent is at a sky high, but also there's a lot of proven guys on the field. It's just a matter of, do they have a quarterback who can distribute the ball downfield and get it to them?
Yeah, I would say my expectation level was fairly high last year after they brought in Chris Mitchell and Harrison and Bo Collins as well. But the point you made there at the end, the question is, do they have the quarterback who can get them the ball? And ultimately, I think that was the biggest issue last year. And we can talk about separation and all those different things, and that does play into it. But it starts with the trigger man when you're talking about the quarterback, wide receiver, what kind of production you're going to get out of those wide receivers. It starts with the guy who has to get them the ball. And, we know it took a few games before Riley Leonard threw his first touchdown pass of the season. We saw him run for a few touchdowns before he found the end zone with a wide receiver last year. But I think that this group, between the returnees that you rattled off there that Notre Dame has, as well as two much more proven guys, I think, via the transfer portal because, like, they might not have eye-popping numbers in terms of their production, but they both played for Power 4 schools. One guy comes from the ACC where he had not a great quarterback. The other guy comes from the Big Ten where, let's be honest, he also had kind of so-so quarterback play. I think this should be an elevation for both of these guys this year. And so when you couple that with Greathouse, with Faison, and with some of the young guys that Notre Dame has in that room as well, I've got a pretty high level of expectation for these guys this season. That's what it all translates into to me. So let's kind of go through and hear some comments from Mike Brown, because he, of course, was hired before the 2023 Sun Bowl after Chancey Stuckey was fired almost immediately after the conclusion of the 2023 season. So this will only be Mike Brown's second season working for Marcus Freeman and the staff here at Notre Dame. A lot of turmoil, of course, when Brown was hired after Tobias Merriweather, Braylon James, Rico Flores, and Chris Tyree all ultimately transferred. But Brown talked recently with us about the transformation of that wide receiver room into what it is right now.
Long ways. I think it's important, just for longevity. You saw that previous year, a lot of guys got banged up and missed a lot of time, and I think that comes from, wear and tear, whether it's even just throughout camp and throughout practice, and splitting reps, and, it's hard to go out there and take every rep in practice and then take every rep in the game and think you're going to last. We played a lot of games last year. And so the more you can spell those guys, keep them fresh, and then that helps you with your development as well. Now when the first guy's gone and graduates, the next guy's gotten a ton of reps, and then it goes on and on and on. And so that's what you hope to build, but obviously it's got to be, the reps have to be deserved. You're not going to just give reps to guys that don't deserve them. So really happy where we've come there, and continue to build that.
You heard him talking about you don't just give reps to guys who don't deserve them. Very similar to what we heard from Max Bullough when he was talking about the linebackers yesterday, and I think what you'll hear from just about any coach. The room that Mike Brown inherited in December 2023 when he took over before the Sun Bowl, Deion Colzie, Matt Salerno, KK Smith, Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison, all three of those guys were freshmen, and then Jaden Thomas as well. Now, obviously, Colzie and Thomas just transferred out in this past offseason. The room that he has now, you go from that to Malachi Fields, Jaden Greathouse, Will Pauling, Jordan Faison, KK Smith, Micah Gilbert, Elijah Burris, Scrap Richardson, Jerome Bettis Jr., Cam Williams, Logan Saldate. What do you think of that transformation over basically a year and a half, not quite 2 seasons, basically 1 season plus?
Yeah, I think that transformation can be summed up by experience, but also young talent. I think it's the perfect combination of, you have your kind of solidified guys that what you're going to get, or at least hope to get out of them. And then you have your younger guys who are probably a little bit more talented, or are, guys you hope to develop and kind of be the homegrown, and you get them from start to finish. But that's what I'm most interested in is kind of seeing how Brown does with the guys that start at Notre Dame and end at Notre Dame. He hasn't had a full cycle or full class go through. Obviously, he inherited a lot. So, again, to me, the transformation looks like you've upgraded kind of your experience guys, right? You have your Malachi Fields. You have your Will Pauling. Again, maybe guys who they had production, but they didn't have elite level production. But they came from programs who really weren't, great in terms of Power 4 or playoff contending type Power 4 teams. Now you add them to Notre Dame. Obviously, that's an upgrade. And then you have your homegrown room of young guys that you hope to develop over the next 3 to 4 years. And I think that group of young guys is some of the most talent that we've seen at Notre Dame to be recruited at the wide receiver position. So, again, I think that this is a huge upgrade.
I think it is as well. And I mean, when you throw in the fact that the 2026 class, the incoming class as of right now, here are the commitments there. You've got Caden Finley, Bubba Frazier, Braden Robinson, all 4-star guys. Devin Fitzgerald, of course, the son of Larry. I would call him 3-star with upside. And Dylan Faison, Jordan's younger brother as well. So, like, when you look at both the state of where they are right now currently, they've done really well in terms of attracting guys from the transfer portal the last 2 years, even though, again, they haven't necessarily shown the proof that, like you're going to come here and you're just going to produce right away. So he's done a lot of things, I think, in a pretty short amount of time when you look at where that room is now, where it's trending compared to where it was when he took over. Has he answered whatever questions or concerns you may have had with him to this point?
No, he hasn't answered all of my questions. I still need to see a 1,000-yard receiver. I still need to see some of that production on the field. And I know that's not directly linked to him because of, the way the offense was run, kind of how Riley Leonard was able to distribute the ball last season. But I think for him, for the answers to be questioned, we need to see Notre Dame have a stud, and at least one guy that can go over 1,000 yards. You'd like to see another guy that probably has at least 8 touchdowns under his belt for the entire season. So I need to see a little bit more production or on the production scale. But I think in terms of getting the guys in the room, the answers have been questioned for the questions have been answered,
yes,
for the most part. But the production is still unanswered, in my opinion.
Yeah. And again, I think that is tied more to the quarterback and the operation of the offense as much as it is the talent in the room. I think that you could have had at least 2 fairly productive, above average, at least average to trending toward above average producing wide receivers last year. If you again, I'm not quibbling with the results because the team obviously went to the national championship game. So it's not about that. We're talking about receiver production, though, specifically. I think that if the quarterback was different and, essentially if you had someone like a CJ Carr or a Kenny Minchie last year as the quarterback, I think that we would have seen a difference. Now, remember, this was not just a last year thing, though, because even the year before that with Sam Hartman, you didn't get that kind of production. The year before that, Drew Pine and Tyler Buckner, that was a completely different story. At least we've seen a couple receivers in the last 2 seasons top 100 yards. It felt like we went a million years at times between seeing a receiver even having a 100-yard game, but we've seen Faison do it. We've seen Jaden Greathouse do it in back-to-back games, and now, of course, we expect to see a continuation of that. The biggest thing he has answered to me is he can bring the talent in, whether it's transfer portal or high school recruits, because there's just that room is starting to get stocked with a lot of young, very upside type talent. And I think that was one of the biggest questions and the biggest frustrations early on a lot of fans had with Mike Brown is, could he even recruit? And again, when you come into the situation that he came into, that's not an easy one when you have to take over before a bowl game because the guy before you was fired. And look at what happened in that room just in general. You had that was a very volatile position, going back to Dell Alexander. It was not a proven position by any means. And I think that we're starting to see that.
The wide receiver room has probably been the least productive position group in the last 5 to 10 years,
especially in terms of the offense. Yeah.
I mean, I'll go both sides.
But you can make that. Yeah, you can make the case for both sides of the ball because look at what the cornerbacks are doing now. Look what the safeties are doing. Look what the linebackers are doing. I mean, they 2 linebackers that everyone, maybe even 2.5 if you include Jack Kaiser, but definitely J.D. Bertrand and Maris Leofau that everybody complained about are on NFL rosters and doing pretty well right now. Defensive line, again, trending in the right direction. You produced a lot of NFL talent there. Offensive line, there's never been a problem. Tight end has always been really good. And, again, transfer portal, but your last 2 quarterbacks, Riley Leonard and Sam Hartman, are both with NFL teams right now in training camp as well. And now the running back room is obviously starting to take off. So, yeah, I think you do have to put wide receivers at the bottom of the list. So what about this year? What's the rotation going to look like this year? They ran with what was essentially a 6-man rotation. I'd say 6+, but you had Jordan Faison injured for a good chunk of last year, so that impacted, it went a little bit deeper because of the fact that he was injured. But Brown talked about how many guys could be in the wide receiver rotation this season.
Depends on the year a little bit. Sure, it kind of depends on how the flow of the game. I like to have 6 guys in the rotation is always the goal. Last year it was a little bit of a different year. We had a couple extra guys that earned specific roles in our offense. So we ended up playing like 8 guys, which was a little bit unique, and it's hard to play 8 guys, but usually 6 guys in the rotation is what you shoot for. If certain extra guys find extra roles, then that is what it is, whatever helps our team the best. But if you can get 6 of those guys and then try to get them all in that first half, in the first few drives, just to get their feet wet, and then, once it gets down to the nitty-gritty time, you got to go with your guys.
Okay, so we're talking about 6 wide receivers again as the rotation. He says that's the goal. You good with that number?
Yeah, I'm good with that number. I think ultimately it makes sense because you're going to have your field, your boundary, and your slot, and so that's three wide receivers right there. And then if you go to 6, you're basically running 2 deep at each wide receiver spot. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And then if you get someone, basically a younger guy who steps up throughout the season, maybe isn't ready at the beginning of the season, but come game 8, game 9, or maybe the postseason, you have someone who could step in and be a 7 or 8 guy, or 7 or 8 spot in that role or in that rotation. Then you start looking to add. But I like the approach of going with who you have now and then adding kind of later. So I think it definitely makes sense because, again, you're basically going 2 deep at each position. When you travel on the road, you're likely going to be at 3 deep, but the 3 deep guys usually don't see the field, right? And so your 2 deep, 6-man rotation makes a lot of sense, especially if someone kind of gets banged up at some point.
Yeah, exactly. And
I think
go ahead.
A fun question is who would be in that 6? I think we all know predominantly who the 4 are going to be, but I think the last 2 are the ones that are really still up for debate.
Because if you look at the X position, the boundary guy, Malachi Fields is a definite there. And your other options, you've got Cam Williams, you've got Micah Gilbert, you've got Jerome Bettis Jr. At the Z, on the field side, you've got Jordan Faison, KK Smith, Elijah Burris predominantly. And then your slot guys, you've got Jaden Greathouse, Will Pauling, Logan Saldanta. After that, Scrap Richardson is probably number 4 at that position. So you've definitely got Malachi Fields, Jordan Faison, Jaden Greathouse, and Will Pauling. Those 4 are your definites. I think it's going to be really interesting to see between Micah Gilbert and Cam Williams who is like the number 2 boundary guy. I think as of right now, I would hedge towards Micah Gilbert. And, we've seen KK Smith, at the very least, he's been fairly consistent, during training camp in the limited opportunities that we've got to see him. But Elijah Burris, there's just so much upside, with the electric plays and stuff like that. So to me, those 3 guys right now are probably fighting for the 2 spots. Well, 2 of between Williams and Gilbert, whoever doesn't end up in front. And again, I would put Gilbert in front right now. So I would say between Cam Williams, KK Smith, Elijah Burris, that would be your top 7 right there.
Yeah, and I think Elijah Burris is going to honestly sneak in. And if he doesn't do it at the beginning of the season, I think he'll definitely do it by the end of the season.
I think so as well. I think he's going to play quite a bit, to what extent that means. I think that you're going to see Elijah Burris out there. But, like Josh is saying, he thinks KK drops from the rotation. Again, I think he is kind of right on that bubble right now. There's just so much upside with Elijah Burris. Salty Virginia Peanuts is saying, where is Micah Gilbert? Again, you look at him as over on the boundary. basically. Like, I don't know if you're talking about depth chart or where. Again, I would put Gilbert right now, and this is like not definitive because we've seen so little, but based on when we've seen them run units and stuff out there, I would put Gilbert slightly ahead of Cam Williams at number 2 at the X position behind Malachi Fields. So the X would go Fields, Gilbert, Williams. This is what I think. And then the Z would go Faison, Burris / Smith. Right now, I'm not exactly sure how they see it, in terms of what they would do to open the season. And then the F, the slot would be Greathouse, Will Pauling. And I think Pauling does have some versatility where he could also play over there at the Z if you wanted him to, and Greathouse could do some of that as well.
Did you see that? I can't remember. My Twitter stopped working today, by the way, so I can't remember when this was. Do you see there was something that Will Pauling just like never leaves the facility?
I'll tell you what, we're going to hear about Will Pauling coming up here in just a minute. Like Mike Brown talked about the fact that there are times when he gets over there at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning, and Will Pauling is already over there. Like,
I hate when I jump the gun.
I don't have that specific cut, but there is a cut on Will Pauling. I didn't, because it was so short and there wasn't a whole lot more than basically just that, the fact that he's there quite a bit. But you're going to hear some comments from Mike Brown coming up next about Will Pauling, about Malachi Fields, and a few comments as well on some of the younger guys like Burris, Logan Saldanta, Cam Williams, and Micah Gilbert as well. We will do that when we return. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. We continue with Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers, talking a little Notre Dame wide receivers on this show today. Mailbag day coming up tomorrow. Don't forget, we didn't have a mailbag last week. We ruffled some feathers, so be ready with your mailbag questions on tomorrow's show. I'll just get that out there right now. You had something, Jesse?
Yeah, I have a hot take here. I don't know if you're ready for it.
Okay. Bring it.
I think Pauling's going to pass Faison by the time the season ends.
You think so?
I think the core three wide receivers will be Fields, Greathouse, Pauling.
Okay. So Scott L. Esquire in the YouTube chat is saying, I want to see our top three receivers be Fields, Greathouse, and Pauling. Those seem like the best three to me. I know Pauling or Greathouse would have to play out of position, though, which is unfortunate. And that's, they tried moving Greathouse outside, and it just never really worked. His natural position is the slot. I could see that coming. I don't doubt what you're saying, because, again, when you look at Will Pauling, you're looking at a guy who has a ton of experience coming over from Cincinnati, and Wisconsin already. He has played a lot of football. He's played much more football than Jordan Faison, especially considering, again, the fact that Faison was unfortunately, kind of hobbled by that high ankle sprain last year.
I just think those are your best three guys. And nothing against Faison, but I just think Will Pauling wants it more. This is his final year. Faison is obviously split between lacrosse, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I just think Pauling's attention is 100% tunnel vision on playing wide receiver. And he just seems like a guy who's going to do whatever it takes to consistently get on the field. And I don't think that means that Faison isn't any good or whatever, but I just think you're going to see more and more as the season goes on, more Will Pauling. And I think Faison would be used kind of situationally, or kind of a more on a scheme basis, right? Like something that is schemed for Faison.
I am Tenzin. I am the son of Aang is accusing you of plagiarism in the YouTube chat. He says it's like you stole it from Scott.
Well, I was thinking about it. I saw Scott said it as well, and I thought it was a perfect opportunity to kind of get it out there.
DJ's asking if Pauling has ever played to the field or if he's always been a slot. He's primarily played slot, but he has played some to the field, and he's practiced to the field as well. So I think that he is your, I don't want to say X factor, but he's a guy I think he's a guy, especially of the veterans, who you can move around a little more. So I could see what you're talking about. I could definitely envision Fields, Greathouse, and Pauling all being out there at the same time.
Yeah, then I think you could naturally move Faison back to slot behind Greathouse, and that's a more natural role considering kind of his body composition and speed, quick twitch, agility type.
Yeah, exactly. Well, since you've continually brought up Will Pauling, I feel like I need to go ahead and play this Will Pauling clip that I've got from Notre Dame wide receivers coach Mike Brown, because, again, he did mention the fact that this is a guy who's in the facility early. He's always working, but Brown and Pauling have a lot of history going back to when Mike Brown recruited Pauling back at Cincinnati. Brown coached Pauling both at Cincinnati for 2 years and at Wisconsin for a year before Brown came over to the Notre Dame staff last year. And he shared this story about seeing Pauling for the first time when he was out recruiting him.
Yeah, the first time I ever saw Will was up at North Central College. He was at a camp there. And, I had gotten his name, and it was just like, hey, actually Coach Gino Verduli, he was like, it was his area. He was like, hey, man, just check this kid out. He's at one of my schools. And so I went over and I started watching him. he ran some good times and stuff like that. But I watched him in one-on-ones, and then he'd go out there, he'd run a route, he'd catch the ball, he'd come back, cut everybody in the line, he's going again, cuts everybody in the line, he's going again, coming up to me. Yeah, it's just like, all right, man, like, all right. Keep going. And so right then I knew how much of a competitor he was, and that was my first encounter of him. I actually offered him a scholarship and hadn't seen his tape or anything. But I knew he was a special person at that point, and then just getting to know him through the years and watching him grow and kind of come out of his shell has been special. And so, like I said, I've known him for a long time now, and he embodies everything that this place is about. When it comes to toughness, it comes to grit, it comes to hard work, it comes to team first guys. That's who he is, and so I knew it would be a perfect fit here.
Do you think that Will Pauling was making all those other guys in that line mad when he kept coming back and cutting in front of them, so he could basically show himself? And it's like, hey, I got the Cincinnati coach over here looking at me. You think he was?
I mean, they're all grown ups. If they cared enough, they'd say, "Hey, you're not cutting me."
Right.
It just seems like he's a guy who wanted it more at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, most of the talk about the transfers has been about Malachi Fields. Could we be underrating the impact that Pauling could have on this year's team?
I think we are, to be honest with you, and I think it plays into kind of my hot take there from a couple minutes ago. I think we are underestimating or undervaluing him because he had a ton of production at a school that really at Wisconsin who couldn't throw the ball, right? Like Wisconsin has been known to be a running team. Obviously, Brown thinks highly of him because he's followed him basically around from Cincinnati to Wisconsin and now over to Notre Dame. So I think this is someone who just kind of grinds it out, gets you those tough kind of, maybe third and short where you need sure hands, someone to catch the ball over the middle of the field, a quick slant route, maybe in or out route. Like I think of him catching those important passes that like the Bo Collins pass that I think he caught against Texas A&M early in the season that ended up being huge. Or again, just another third down where you need to have it. Like to me, he's going to be that sure-handed, we throw him the ball, we know he's going to catch it type of situation. So I do think we are undervaluing him at the moment, and I think his stock is just going to continue to rise as the season goes on, and also as the intensity of the moment increases. He seems like a guy who will always step up to the plate and never really be fazed by the situation or circumstances on the field.
Yeah, I think so as well. And like when you look at, again, it's not like, when he was at Cincinnati, or not Cincinnati, when he was at Wisconsin, it's not like that offense was so great, and he had great quarterbacks throwing him the football. I mean, he had in the 2 years ago, 2023, he had 74 receptions and 837 yards. Like, think about the last 5 years at Notre Dame. Like, you would probably be doing cartwheels and dancing a jig down on the field if you had a Notre Dame wide receiver who put up those kind of numbers in a single season. He's already done it. And again, like when you hear about the work ethic that he's got, and the fact that I think that he's going to be in the most conducive offense that he has been in so far to getting the ball downfield and getting him the football, I think that he's going to end up being a really big factor in this offense this season.
I wouldn't be surprised. Again, I'm just going hot take after hot take. I wouldn't be surprised if he leads the wide receiver rooms in touchdowns this season.
And taking it a step further, putting him at the top now.
In touchdowns.
Oh, in touchdowns. So Will Pauling leads the wide receivers in touchdowns. Okay.
Write that down somewhere.
I knew that we would get some pushback from Salty Virginia Peanuts. He says in the YouTube chat, Pauling isn't cutting the great winner Malachi. Children of the cornfields in line. I can assure you of that. Well, I think all three of them are going to be really productive when it comes down to it. And Jordan Faison's going to have something to say about it as well. That's again, going back to how we started off this hour talking about how this wide receiver room has transformed. And obviously when you have two proven guys from Power 4 schools who come in here and transfer, like, I think both of these guys are a marked improvement from the kind of transfers they got last year. You know, like Bo Collins, really, really solid guy, really solid receiver. But I think both Fields and Pauling are both more dynamic type receivers than what Bo Collins was. He was basically a possession type guy when it came down to it. I mean, that's just the way it was. So the other addition to this room is Malachi Fields. Now, he is someone who we have talked more about, and there's been a lot more fanfare about after he transferred over from Virginia. He's 6'4", over 220 pounds. He's got 36 games under his belt over the last 4 seasons. And here's what Notre Dame receivers coach Mike Brown says Fields brings that Notre Dame didn't have at the boundary position a year ago.
We're hoping that he brings just an even bigger presence, into the boundary. Guys want to play one-on-one coverage out there. And, obviously you got a bunch of great running backs and a great offensive line. And, just to take some pressure off of those guys, getting some one-on-one opportunities and having the ability to go over and make plays. When you have that, it takes a lot of stress off of a lot of different things. And so we're hoping that's what he brings to us this year. We'll move him around. We won't just leave him in the boundary. We'll move him all over the place and find different ways to get on the ball. But because he's that type of player, and I think you have to do that. So that's what we're hoping for.
Yeah, and he also has something that you can't teach, and that is size. At, again, 6'4". How important is that Mike Brown was talking about?
So in terms of Malachi Fields, there's 2 things that are really important that he needs to provide to this team. One, he needs to be that red zone, go up and get the ball on a fade type situation where he can just high point the ball and use his frame and size to essentially box out defenders and go get the ball, be a big, easy target for CJ Carr or Kenny Minchey. And I think more importantly, point number 2, we all know Notre Dame is going to be able to run the ball very well. They have a great offensive line who can run block. They have Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, Aeneas Williams, and probably Jabron Payne, who's going to be back there this season. And so what does that mean? If you're scouting Notre Dame, you're telling – I can guarantee you they're going to load the box. And they're going to say, we're going to stop the run and make CJ Carr beat us. And if you're loading the box, that means you're going to have one-on-one outside on the perimeter. Malachi Fields has to eat that up in order for the run game to also be able to reopen back up. And so that to me is the biggest thing. You got to spread the field out, and if they want to condense down in the box, then you have to recognize that Malachi Fields, again, your biggest body wide receiver, is going to be one-on-one. He should win those situations more often than not, right? You start completing those one-on-one passes, and now the run game opens back up. Then you hit a couple play action passes, and that deep ball is now open down the field. So to me, Malachi Fields is kind of the X factor of just keeping the gears turning smoothly on offense.
Yeah, and we haven't seen this kind of guy at that position, the X receiver, the boundary receiver for Notre Dame, probably since Chase Claypool. This is the kind of guy, and it used to be like they just had all these big bodied receivers. Some were more dynamic than others. Obviously Claypool and Boykin were at the top of the list, but it has been a while since we've seen a guy, not just with the size, but with the dynamic ability. Like we saw that highlight catch that he made in that practice last week where Notre Dame social media shared that acrobatic looking high point catch that Malachi Fields made. Like that's the kind of stuff that he can brings that we just haven't seen in a few years, unfortunately. And you set me up for this next cut because you started talking about how that boundary also plays into the ability to run the ball. And Mike Brown was asked if having that boundary threat can help Notre Dame's running game as well.
I mean, last year was a unique year. The offense, we didn't know who we were, early on. It took some time to figure out, man, what is this offense going to be? And I think, as you saw, the weeks went, and they went. We got a little more comfortable, figured out who we were, and that's just what it turned into last year. Yeah. And so, yeah, of course, we're hopeful we get better at all three spots this year, with guys being older, got additions of guys. But, of course, man, like you said, anytime you've got that extra threat into the boundary, it takes so much pressure off of that run game. That's for anybody in the country.
All right, so what do you think, Jess? How much do you think that that presence by a guy like Malachi Fields is going to have on impacting the run game?
Yeah, I touched on it a little bit. I feel like in my previous kind of cut when we were talking about, Malachi Fields, but the thing is, he has to continue to be that presence on the outside that either forces a team to lighten up the box, or and then when they start to lighten up the box, that's when you start to hit, a lot of those run plays kind of through the middle of the teeth of the defense. So just having his presence on the outside, I think, means there's going to be a mismatch somewhere, right? Notre Dame should always have an answer at the end of the day, depending on what they're seeing in terms of the box numbers. If it's a heavy box, they should be immediately looking to who is their one-on-one guy. Who do they trust the most in one-on-one situations? Given Malachi Fields' frame, size, and experience, he has to be the front runner right now for who they're going to trust in one-on-one situations. Then, if you see teams kind of go more of a too-high shell, or maybe they're double teaming onto the outside, it should be we feed Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price until they're stopped. So it's kind of like this tag team back and forth depending on where the numbers are at.
Yeah.
And there should always be an answer at the end of the day. And Malachi Fields is a huge part of that equation because Notre Dame hasn't had the physical presence
exactly
of that kind of wide receiver in a long time, enough to like strike the fear into you, right? Because you're basically in the past saying, all right, well, if we load the box, we're really not ultimately concerned about what's going on the outside because they just haven't been dynamic enough on the outside. And they haven't had a quarterback who's has enough arm talent to get the ball downfield. So having him alone and his presence is going to, I think, cause a lot of frustration and game plan issues for opposing defenses.
Especially when you factor in who the running backs are and how much damage they can do against you. And, like what we've talked about with different personnel packages and all that kind of stuff. There's just going to be so many different options. And like to the point of who the receivers are going to be and, everything else, I think a lot of that is going to come down to game plan and specific opponent. Sometimes just the different kind of bodies, the different kind of personnel groupings that Notre Dame can throw at different opponents, whether it's 20 personnel, 21, 12, 11, whatever it happens to be. I think that they've got an answer for just about everything. Got a couple more comments from Mike Brown I want to hopefully get to before we wrap up the first hour of the show on some of the young Notre Dame wide receivers, including Burris, Saldate, Williams, and Gilbert as well. So we will do that after we take our final timeout of this hour. Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat with IrishBreakdown.com. Winding down hour one of Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. I'm Sean Stiers along with Jesse Stiers tonight. He's been dancing in and out, having some technical issues. Everything holding up at your end? Cannot hear you.
It would help if I unmuted my mic. I always get afraid during the breaks, so coming out of break, I have to make sure to unmute myself. But what about this storm that's rolling in? I hope we can get out of here before it gets down and dirty.
I know. There's a chance that rain is coming in, so that could mean some bonus overtime in terms of the show tonight. We were supposed to be done by around 6:40, but there are some storms in the area, and there's a South Bend Cubs baseball game that's supposed to start at 7, but we'll find out, hopefully, whether or not we're going to be in a whether they're going to be in a rain delay, which means we would extend with some rain delay programming here on the show. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to save a couple of these Mike Brown cuts in case we need something else to talk about later on in the show. Appreciate the comment from Patrick Ball. He says, good show, fellas, in the YouTube chat. Excellent insight. Something new, and everyone at this juncture of the offseason are talking about the same narratives. Thanks. Well, thank you for the nice comment there, Patrick. We've, as we said, we get these media opportunities with the different assistant coaches and players over there at Notre Dame. And so we try to bring as much of these kind of insights from all of the assistants as we can. That's why we get to talk to them, to kind of hear about what they're thinking as they're going into the season, what the position group obviously is looking like going into the season, and just how things are shaping up. And this is obviously, as we said earlier, Jesse, this is going to be a very important position group for Notre Dame this year in terms of what this
it's the position group that's going to take them over the top. Obviously, the quarterback play is going to be important, but you got to have wide receivers who can catch the ball. Not only catch the ball, but be dynamic after they catch the ball. Can they make guys miss? Can they get those extra few yards to pick up some first downs, to shorten up some runs for the running backs? Like, it's all in play, in my opinion. And you look at past, obviously Ohio State won a national championship last year. They had an extremely talented running back room. I just think in order to keep up pace with the rest of the offenses kind of in modern college football, Notre Dame needs to take that step at the wide receiver position. I think this is the best year to do that. And then, second of all, Patrick, there's only one Jesse. That's why you've not heard these sort of takes before.
All these fantastic insights from the one and only Jesse Stiers. That's right.
That's correct.
That's absolutely right. Vince D'Addario will be in tomorrow. It is mailbag day tomorrow. Chris Ayers has been throwing up a lot of different comments / questions in the chat. Be sure to be here tomorrow, Chris, for the mailbag show, because for anyone maybe who's kind of getting in, hasn't been here before, Wednesday is typically the mailbag show, and we answer all the Notre Dame football related questions from listeners in the YouTube chat. So if you're listening on the radio, find your way to the YouTube channel tomorrow, whether it's Irish Breakdown or Sports Radio WSBT, and pop in your own questions as well. That's what we do on Wednesdays, and that's what we will
make sure to bring the freaking heat. Everyone wants the mailbag. You got to bring the heat to the mailbag. I don't want Salty just dropping bombs or just a standard question of, is this team going to make the playoffs? That team, like, do a little bit of homework, study up on what's been going on in camp, and bring some freaking heat to the mailbag tomorrow.
Yeah. Scott even taking it to another level. He says there's only one Sean who works his tail off to generate unique content. Appreciate that, Scott, as well. All right, we will take a timeout, and in the second hour, rapid fire comes your way. We've got a lot of different stuff in rapid fire. We've got some comments from Emil Wagner, Notre Dame's right tackle, including a big matchup he had in the Orange Bowl semifinal matchup against Penn State last year. We'll also hear from Joe Rudolph and some other Notre Dame and other topics coming up in rapid fire in hour 2 of Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. We begin hour 2 of Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat with IrishBreakdown.com with some rapid fire. Are you ready for it, Jesse?
I'm ready to start firing away.
All right. Delayed unmute right there. So I've been told the South Bend Cubs were home last week. They're actually on the road this week. They play at the same time, so they are looking like the weather should be good in terms of, what we were talking about with the potential rain delay. So, fingers crossed. Get that yawn off your face. I don't know what you're doing right now. Before we start with our rapid fire questions, I am Tenzin. I am the son of Aang. Asks you, Jesse Stiers, math major and engineering whiz, what's your favorite differential equation, and explain it like I'm 5.
I mean, there's a lot that could go here. I feel like this is more or less a mailbag question.
Okay, all right. We can hold off on that. We don't have to address that. If you're going to cop out on differential equations.
It's been a good 10 years since my differential equation days. I could solve them, but I got to do a little research first.
Okay. All right. Good enough. Well, we talked recently with Fighting Irish right tackle Emil Wagner, who, of course, went head-to-head with future first-round draft pick Abdul Carter, who's now with the New York Giants, in the Orange Bowl in the college football playoff semifinal win over Penn State. Wagner shared this thought on Abdul Carter.
No, he was Darth Vader. He was all about work. He was all about work. But I think it was a great challenge, and especially being the guy he ended up in the draft and going that high. I think it was a great opportunity to kind of see where I'm at as a tackle. A lot of areas to improve, but I'm glad I had the chance to go against him. I think Abdul Carter is probably one of the best athletes and best players I've ever seen on the football field. I think it's a guy that can really destroy a game plan, destroy a game, whatever it is. He's someone that can make a difference.
So let me start with you, Jesse. You heard Emil Wagner say that Abdul Carter was Darth Vader, and he was basically asked, I think I didn't probably set it up properly. He was asked, if there was a lot of talking going on and that kind of stuff. He's like, not really. He was just Darth Vader out there. So Wagner called Carter Darth Vader. Do you like that movie analogy, or is there another movie character villain that you would use for Abdul Carter?
No, I like Darth Vader. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, but I at least know of Darth Vader. But it makes sense. Just kind of a guy. Obviously, he's on the dark side, or the opposing team. He's super powerful, super strong, and like based off what Emil Wagner said, Darth Vader didn't do a lot of talking. It just kind of showed up, wrecked stuff, and then left at the end of the day. So
right.
I like it. I guess I would ask if you had someone or another analogy that you liked better.
I actually did. I had one that popped to mind right away when I think of not very verbose movie villains. There are quite a few. Fred brings up a good one in the YouTube chat. Jason Voorhees, the silent killer. I think that's a pretty good one. I'm going with Ivan Drago from Rocky IV, the big Russian. I must break you. Like, there was very little talking, and he was he was both the irresistible force and the immovable object. Like he was just a roided out Russian machine from start to finish until Rocky, got up on his step ladder and finally finished him off there in Russia when they had the fight in Russia. But up until that, like, Drago was just Drago, and there was not much you could do with Drago. So that's who I'm going with. I'm going with Drago.
I like yours better. I knew yours would be better too.
I thought it was pretty solid anyway. Well, let's go and hear from Fighting Irish offensive line coach on Emil Wagner. And here's what Rudolph said Wagner showed him in that matchup against Abdul Carter.
Resiliency, or as Father Mike Burke, an old friend of mine, would say, perseverance. It's a persevere. And early on, really 11 played over the left tackle, and he had an injury in the last game. And we thought, maybe maybe he wouldn't play, maybe he would even play over the right side, but you really don't see him on film lined up there doing anything. So the first he starts out over there, and I think at first, he kind of was like, okay, let me get a feel for this, and realized like there's no time to get a feel. Like I got to cut it loose and go. And to see him just do that was really good. And I think, our conversation has been now, don't ever wait. Like go out there and be the best no matter who's across from you, and trust that. And I think he really takes that to heart.
All right, so there's Joe Rudolph on Emil Wagner. Abdul Carter was one of 3 edge rushers that the Irish faced last season who were drafted in the first round this past April. What do you think that means for Wagner and Notre Dame this season, Jess?
Yeah, I think for Wagner, for Knapp, and really any of those other young guys that saw some experience last season, I just think that it should give them confidence at the end of the day. They were not true freshmen. Knapp was a true freshman, but these guys are making their first career starts, and it's not like it were just cakewalk opponents or guys that they could just bully around. Not only did they have to step up, but they had to step up against fierce competition. So that should give them confidence, and really the ability to step up their game in year 2. In my opinion, I think we should see elevated play from Wagner and from Knapp, just because they were thrown into the fire early. But not only were they thrown into the fire, they had to hold their own against grown men who are now going to be playing in the NFL. So I like to me as a fan, I feel even more confident that they're going to be better this season.
I think so as well. Again, like we talked a little bit about them yesterday. They were baptized by fire last year, thrown into the fire as guys who had never started. They came out with 31 combined starts. The only start between the two that was not made was when Anthony Knapp got injured in that Penn State game and was not able to go in the national championship game. So 31 of 32 potential starts between 2 tackles who had not started a game between them going into last season. And again, look at the level of competition. It wasn't from start to finish. Shamar Stewart in the first game of the season, and with Texas A&M, and on down the line, finishing up with Abdul Carter in the Orange Bowl, in the semifinal against Penn State. They've seen, they saw last year as inexperienced guys, most likely better competition than what they're going to see this year. That doesn't mean they'll never be challenged, but I think that what the level of experience they got last year against that level of competition is going to help them greatly going into this season.
I definitely agree. There just has to be a level of swagger, in my opinion. You have to know kind of what the situations you were put in last year, the opponents that you faced, the swagger, the mentality should be, I'm going to go out there and dominate anyone. And anyone who's across from me. And I'm sure that's what it was, but there's going to be more truth to that this season, right? We should see them really push guys off the line of scrimmage and dominate, because you have gone up against some of that better competition. You know what that looks like, and you know what's expected of you every play, regardless of if it's Abdul Carter or a random defensive end for Navy at the end of the day, right? You should have the same mentality, knowing what you were able to accomplish last season.
We had some other suggestions for the character, the movie villain character. Salty says the Predator. That's a good one. Silent and virtually indestructible for most of the movie anyway. And of course, they made a lot of sequels as well. Scott L. Esquire says he was Jason Bourne. Dude was everywhere. 10 times I thought we got him, but we didn't. That's
a good one.
That's another good one. Yeah, Bourne, very elusive, obviously. And
Bourne
Chris
wasn't a villain, though. I guess depending on who you ask, but he was a villain of
great movie character, but not a villain. Yeah. Yeah. Chris just going with, if he dies, he dies, going back to the to the Drago. And then Father David is asking, did I just suggest that Carter was roided out? No, just Ivan Drago. To clarify, just Ivan Drago was roided out. That was it. All right, we heard from Max Bulla on yesterday's show, and one of the cuts that we didn't get to yesterday is coming up after the break. We're going to take a timeout, and then we will hear from Max Bulla, and we've got some other topics that we're going to get to as well, because we are wrapping up at 6:40-ish tonight, because we've got South Bend Cubs baseball coming up a little bit later. So we'll hear from Max Bulla on Drake Bowen and some more topics as well coming up. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com.
Where are you going?
We continue with Rapid Fire on Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. We heard some thoughts from Notre Dame linebackers coach Max Bulla yesterday. We didn't talk about Drake Bowen on yesterday's show. The junior linebacker, of course, played baseball and football his first 2 years at Notre Dame, but he's given up baseball this season. Here's what Bulla had to say about that.
I think the baseball thing was just he was finally able to concentrate on, just football. His whole life he's been dragged this way for baseball, that way for school, this way for football, and then baseball's crazy schedule, so they're always traveling, and he never got to recover in the off season. Like, to me, we're finally starting to see what Drake Bowen can actually be when he focuses on one thing, eats for one thing, sleeps for one thing, does all the things that you're supposed to be doing, and it's really his rest is where it has helped him. I think Drake can be, I told the scout the other day, they kept coming here and asking about J.D. Bertrand and Jack Kaiser, who I can't say enough about. I've said, here's your next one. He just has the measurables y'all want. And that's as simple as it is.
All right, Jesse. So how much impact do you think giving up baseball could have for Bowen this year?
I think giving up baseball can honestly take him to the next level. When you're focused on your craft and you that's kind of your singular focus and there's nothing else to worry about, it just, I feel like, clears so much mentally. And then off the field as well. Like, you don't have to worry about the stress of being in class, being at football, being at baseball. It kind of, takes a third off your plate, to be honest with you, at the end of the day. So someone who can solely focus on, his craft in one individual sport, I think is super beneficial. And, a lot of people say, and I agree with this, that high school and middle school and growing up, you should play as many sports as possible. And I completely agree. It makes you a better athlete. But I think at some point you have to, and probably when you get to college, I think you have to kind of give them up if you want to focus on one and your career, goal is to make it to the league, right? Because it's hard enough to make it to the league in one sport. You're definitely probably not going to make the league in two sports. So you kind of have to cut ties and say, what am I better at? What can I focus on? And for Drake Bowen, I think it definitely makes sense that he sticks to football. And again, I think he's been on kind of that cusp of being, an All-American or one of the top players in all of college football at his position. I think now more than ever, this is his opportunity to take that leap now that there is less on his plate.
Doesn't it make you appreciate like what Bo Jackson and Deion Sanders were
100%.
even more? Like when you think about, like, especially Bo. Well, I mean, I think Deion falls into this as well. I mean, he's a guy who was playing an NFL season and was also taking helicopters so he could be in the playoffs and the World Series for the Atlanta Braves. And he's getting flack from the Braves people in the meantime because of the fact, well, you said you were going to, dedicate solely on this. Look, like, to be that level is like, it is the 0.001%. We haven't seen anything like it since Deion. And, like Bo Jackson, there's a case that if he doesn't injure that hip playing for the Raiders, that he might end up in the Hall of Fame for both sports with the kind of start that he had to his career in both. But, as far as what it means for Bowen, again, we just don't see those kind of people there. It's so rare to see that. And we got to talk to Drake Bowen a little bit the other day as well. And the biggest thing he was talking about, and you heard Max Bulla talk about it, is the rest. And like Bowen was just talking about, feels like he's got his legs underneath him a little bit more. And to your point, as well about like he can just focus on the one thing, because the biggest impact in college when you're trying to play two, college baseball and college football is, the biggest intersection that you have is in the spring, when baseball is going on. So there's a lot less downtime. And so just the ability to focus solely on football, I think that like his game already took off last year. And I think we could see a really considerable jump from Drake Bowen's game this year as well. Okay, so I have spared our listeners this topic.
Oh,
I have spared Jesse this topic for a while.
You know that this is going to frustrate me just as much as it's going to frustrate everyone else.
I know. I'm ready to start a fire. right now. We're going to rise up. We're going to gather around. So Jerry Jones in Hollywood yesterday, promoting his upcoming Netflix series, was asked which is the bigger risk in regards to Micah Parsons' future with the uncertain contract status and Micah Parsons demanding a trade. He was asked, which is the bigger risk, trading him or signing him? Jerry Jones said, all of it is risk. So which do you think is the bigger risk? And just whatever you think of that answer as well.
I think that answer is very Jerry, first of all. I think that short term, it's a bigger risk to trade him. I think long term, it's a bigger risk comparatively. Like, to me, I think having Micah Parsons on your making Micah Parsons a Cowboy for the rest of his life, that's zero risk, right? But if you trade him now, this defense, you're just setting up this defense this season and probably next season for failure, because they're just a completely different defense when Micah Parsons isn't on the field. And that might be a cliche answer, because it's like, okay, what if you took Myles Garrett away from the Browns? What if you took TJ Watt away from the Steelers? It's obviously going to have an impact. But if they were to trade, you obviously would want them to set up the future, or maybe, get a couple guys now and a couple draft picks for down the road. But, it's their defense would quite honestly suck this season if they didn't have Micah Parsons on their side. They're not going to be they're going to be an average to probably below average defense this season. And if they don't have Micah Parsons, they would be in the bottom 25% of the league in terms of defense. But I'm just going to put this out there now. I saw one of the Cowboy writers kind of say this, and it honestly makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, would we be surprised, knowing that this show is releasing on Netflix, that Jerry Jones is doing whatever he can to get the Cowboys into the stratosphere even more?
I didn't even get into this. I saw this after I came up with this question, the clip on ESPN this afternoon. He also said, he basically said the quiet part out loud. In addition to this comment, he basically said that all of this is like, I can't remember the exact word that he used, but he essentially said that it's, I'm paraphrasing, any attention is good attention. That's basically what he said. He loves the headlines. He loves the fact that the Cowboys are in the headlines, and he's played this game over and over again. We know that he's played this game over and over again. I think that the difference in this is he hasn't played the game with Micah Parsons before, and the mentality that Parsons has is just a little bit different than guys like CeeDee Lamb and Ezekiel Elliott and Dak Prescott and Zach Martin and guys like that who Jerry has played this game with before. Like Micah's willing to play a complete game of chicken. I don't know that some of those other guys were completely willing to play that game. But Jerry likes the fact that by drawing it out like this and dragging it out like this, it's headlines. He's giving everyone content. He's giving ESPN and NFL Network and everyone else, he's giving them a headline story and a topic to talk about every day, and he likes that. He has always loved the attention economy, and that's what he's got with this right now. It is just another way to get attention for the Dallas Cowboys brand.
Well, not only that, but he knows that the more people that watch it on Netflix, that's just more revenue at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
So you create more revenue. What can you do with that money? You can sign Micah Parsons. So maybe it'll be a full cycle moment, like you go through this game of chicken, you get more people to watch Netflix, more people watch Netflix, you get more money. Now you got more money to sign Micah Parsons, and it's all a moot point. But, it's just super frustrating at the end of the day, because Parsons has said that he wanted this deal to be done a year ago, and he would have taken a friendlier deal before kind of the market was set. Now, all of that is out of the window, and everything with Jerry Jones is just insanity, because he does the same things over and over again, but we as fans expect a different result. He's going to overpay Micah Parsons when he could have had a much more friendlier deal done 6 to 12 months ago.
Right. Fred said in the YouTube chat, says McDonald's got rid of Ronald McDonald. When will Dallas get rid of their clown? Jerry, it's not bad. It's not bad at all.
I think the more important thing to talk about in terms of the Dallas Cowboys is our boy Maris Leofau. I saw Schottenheimer had some very nice things to say about Maris Leofau, and I think he's going to have a really good year too in this defense.
Yeah, he had a solid first year, more as a role player. I think he's going to have a bigger role this year, and I've heard both Schottenheimer and some of the other media types down there in Dallas talking about Maris Leofau as well. I think that he's going to have a really good year for him. Salty says, by the way, there it is, drink. I just want it on record. This is week 4 since we've started, this crossover show with Irish Breakdown and Sports Radio WSBT. I believe this is the first time we've talked Cowboys. The whole time we've been doing this. We have not talked about this Parsons thing.
That's true.
You haven't wanted to. You've wanted to avoid it as much as possible.
So
we have spared everyone.
Is Maris and Sony the leading power couple right now of Notre Dame?
I don't know who would be ahead of them. She's probably going to be the rookie of the year in the WNBA.
Does that make you more or less frustrated with how the season ended?
A little more, honestly. Like when you look at how she's played and you look at all, like,
I just think it shows there were too many alpha scorer personalities on that court at the same time.
Probably so. Probably just an abundance of riches, but like that never bothered UConn when they had stacked rosters. They just ran over everybody and won national championships. That's why it makes it a little bit more frustrating.
You're not wrong.
Joe says Jerry is the bigger risk. He needs to be let go and someone else really run it. Yeah, I mean, you have a hard time firing the owner, unfortunately. Chris says George Pickens saying he's with the Cowboys in an organization known for Super Bowls after leaving the Steelers. I mean, I get what you're saying. They are known for Super Bowls. Unfortunately, they were all won more than 30 years ago. So Joseph says, remember the Emmitt Smith holdout? I do. They started 0-2, and they did. They won the he said they started 0-2 after winning the Super Bowl the previous season, and they ended up winning the Super Bowl that year that Emmitt held out, and they started 0-2. I believe they became the first NFL team to start 0-2 and ultimately win the Super Bowl that year after Emmitt finally signed. There was another comment that I saw in here that I can't find. I think it was Chris who had been having a pretty good show. I feel like in the YouTube chat, but then he said that Micah Parsons is the 5th best pass rusher in the NFL. I've got to beg to differ with that.
Strongly disagree.
Ooh, Scott is saying Paige Beckers will win the Rookie of the Year in the WNBA. I'm going to stick with Sony. I know Paige is having a decent year herself. Team's not as good. And if she does win it, I think it's going to be more because of her name than anything. But the way things happen in the WNBA, I wouldn't put that past anybody, I guess, at this point either. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Patriots offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels is thinking about running the tush push with Drake May this year.
It's an excellent idea. If you can't beat them, join them. Everyone wants to seem to complain about why the tush push play shouldn't be legal. Why not invent your own tush push? Why don't you mimic it and make other teams stop you, right? I think Drake May is the perfect quarterback to do it. He's got the athleticism. Probably doesn't have quite the leg strength that Jalen Hurts has, but he's still going to have some beefy guys behind him to push on that tush, as they say. But again, to me, it's a proven play that works, right? And so if you're an offensive coordinator, why would you not spend 2-3 periods maybe trying to install it? And then if it works, you run it. If not, you at least say that you tried and you move on.
And that's the thing. There's been all this complaining about the tush push. The bottom line is, okay, if you don't like it, stop it, for one. And number two, what's to stop you from running it? Like, why haven't more this has been around for a while now. Why haven't more teams done this? You know, I've heard the argument, well, not every, Jalen Hurts can squat 600 pounds and everything, and it's not just about Jalen Hurts and the squatting the 600 pounds. It's about those guys that are in front of him getting that push, as well as the guys who get behind him and push him as well. And everyone else can do that. They just haven't shown the willingness to practice it and perfect it the way the Eagles have done. So I think it's a great idea that the Patriots, at least give it a shot. My question is, why hasn't anyone else tried harder to do it to this point? All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up with that.
We made it.
Good stuff tonight, Jess. You worked it out.
I'm always here for the people. There's really no excuses in my game. I just figure out a way to get it done.
That's right. No excuses. Play like a champion. That's what it's all about. All right. Mailbag show coming up tomorrow. Be sure and get in and bring us some juicy, good questions. Bring the heat. Tomorrow's Notre Dame football mailbag show. We will talk to you then. South Bend Cubs baseball is coming up next here on Sports Radio WSBT. This has been Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. For Jesse Stiers, Sean Stiers, we'll talk to you tomorrow.